Solo, a Star Wars story, is a weird movie to go to the movie theaters to go see, leading up to its release from my perspective. I am a self-proclaimed card-carrying geek from a family of self-proclaimed card-carrying geeks, and my brothers, my friends, were not interested in seeing this movie. Some of my friends were boycotting the movie because it destroys the backstory of Han Solo, which I never cared about, still don't, and I have never read any of the expanded universes. Some of my friends don't like the casting of Alden Ehrenreich as Solo because he doesn't fit what they picture a young Han Solo would look like, and it doesn't feel right with him as Han. As weird and vague as that sounds, that's how they feel. Speaking of my brothers, way back when, they agreed to see Revenge of the Sith in the theaters as card-carrying geeks, even though we didn't like The Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones and knew the third movie would suck, and it did. Have to say the subtitles to prove I am a geek. My family even saw the Clone Wars movie in the theaters, and I say that movie is okay, but better than episode 1, 2, and 3. Then again, we saw it at the $2 theater when we saw it. But anyway, I decided to and see the movie for myself because I was interested in some of the elements of the film. Like when I saw Donald Glover as Lando, my mind was like, oh yeah, that's totally Lando Calrissian, no doubt about it. It should be worth it just to see him in it. He should have his own movie. I also don't hate Ron Howard as a director, not yet at least. I would agree that A Beautiful Mind is an okay movie, not a great movie, but I enjoyed it all the same. And Ron Howard has quite a bit of goodwill for me for Willow, a family classic of ours. So, what I think about the movie? Pretty good, actually. A solid, fun, enjoyable summer blockbuster. After all, this movie is the adventures of young Indiana Solo in a space western. The movie begins with Han, played adequately by Alden Ehrenreich, getting in hold of enough Coridium, a form of hyperfuel that is sought after by everyone and fetches a fair price, to get out of the gang he and his girlfriend Corian, played by Emily Clark, have been in since birth, essentially for being orphaned. Han was able to make it through the checkpoint, but Corin was not. With the motivation of rescuing her eventually, Han figures he got to get a job with the First Galactic Empire to be a pilot. Flash forward 3 years later, Han is doing his best to kind of be useful as a soldier in the Empire and not dying. He manages to stumble across Tobias Beckner, played by Woody Harrelson's character, and his gang as they are borrowing one of the Empire's ships to perform a train heist. Han is able to weasel his way into the gang and get in the job because he just became friends with a Wookiee in Chewbacca, and the gang is short-handed and could use some muscle. And that's what sets up the rest of the film as we move from heist to heist. Most of the movie has quite a bit of what feels like its stock scenes of character development and action. It is in a way a paint-by-numbers movie, but it helps them to have a very experienced crew and post-production team that knows how to make solid movies. The train heist scene was really well done in my book. The action was intense in places, it has emotional weight behind the events because we got to know everyone involved with the classic trope of the campfire scene. And speaking of all the other characters, this movie is just like a typical shonen action anime where the main character is nowhere near as interesting as all the other side supporting characters. You almost wish the film or series was all about the supporting cast and not the main character. That's not to say that Han in the movie is annoying or grating on me. Han is just not as interesting as the rest of the supporting cast. Speaking of supporting cast, if you are a fan of Chewbacca, you should see this movie. He has plenty of scenes and has his moments to shine. We get to learn a bit about him too. And Joanna Stonebridge does a great job of body acting to bring Chewie to life. I greatly enjoyed Tobias Becker's gang. Valve and Rio Durant have enough personality to fill the screen with their presence and for the scenes that they have. I love Paul Bettany as the obvious villain in this movie, mostly because, yeah, I like Paul Bettany in general. He is not only obviously this movie's villain because of the character interactions and how he carries himself, but also in the way he looks. You don't give a character scars on their face like that without meaning to create the simple visual marker of, by the way, have I told you that I'm the villain, your villain for the day? No, because I don't have to! Emily Carter's career is there after the beginning, and I wonder if Han will see the flags in order to go down her story path to learn her backstory. The signs are there. Donald Glover as Lando needs his own fucking movie yesterday. Maybe in that movie we can finally actually see Lando being pansexual and makes out with a woman, and then later a man, and then a droid. One of the writers saying that Lando is pansexual is neat, kind of, but won't mean anything if we don't see it. Once we the audience sees him being pan, then that would be good LGBTQ plus representation. It would be awesome. It would be more awesome if there's more than just one queer character in the movie as well. And then there's L3, voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Lando's partner. It's great to finally see a sentient drone who cares deeply about the plight of and marginalization of her kind. Back to the action scenes, and they're really well done. I was never confused with what was happening and why. I was able to follow along, and the directions in those scenes is quite capable of ratcheting up the tension and the intensity, and there's a little variety in the kind of action we're seeing from the various different scenes. One of my criticisms comes at the very end and involves something that is attached to the rest of the Star Wars lore, and I know the movie wants my reaction to be, oh, that is so cool, that is surprising, but instead it was like, really? Did they really do that? And that causes me to think about how this film fits in the timeline of the overall movie series, and honestly, it just confused me on that aspect. But it wasn't a deal breaker for the rest of the movie. I have a few other criticisms of some of the scenes in the movie, but they're very niche complaints, and so I'll put them at the end of the movie. Now my final thoughts. The action, like I said, is in this movie is great in places and solid in everywhere else. The plot and story are executed fairly well for what the movie wants and needs them to be. I was actually surprised at some plot twists in the movie, not to say that they're amazing, oh shit moments, but more like, oh, that's a little surprising. I do like the aesthetics of the movie. It looks like its own world and is apart from the Star Wars universe, but at the same time it's still a Star Wars movie. This movie is not a major artistic endeavor, which after The Last Jedi, a great movie, it doesn't need to be. It's just meant to be a fun filler movie in the franchise. It's just supposed to be a pretty good family-friendly fun times. It's a good popcorn movie, and I say check it out. Like I said, I do have a few criticisms of the movie, but that's only because I used to play poker. There is a poker-like game that Lando and Han play in the movie in a few scenes. Han and Lando would splash the pot. They would throw the chips and money into the pot in the center of the table, where the rest of the money is for that hand. You'd never do that when you play poker. If you ever at a casino playing $1, $2, Nolan, Texas Hold'em, you would only put your chips in or for your bet or raise right in front of you so the dealer can figure out how much you raise. That is important information for the rest of the players, and it is polite. If you're throwing chips into the center of the table with the rest of the money splashing the pot, you're making it difficult for the dealer and the other players to know how much you are betting. It is bad form. There's a very, very common trope in Hollywood Wild West poker scenes. Han and Lando were string racing each other. The classic, I see you 100, and they'll raise you 300. It's against the rules in poker. Because if you go, I see you 100, then you can pause and watch your opponent's reactions and see if they don't like you calling their bet. And then go, and I raise you 300. That gives you an advantage in having more information than your opponent for making the initial bet, and disincentivizes someone from making the initial bet, which is why in the rules of poker, your first action is binding. So if you say, I see you 100, and then raise your 300, the dealer will say, no, you can't do that, you are calling the $100 bet. But these complaints would only bother other poker players like me. But then again, even the movie Rounders was very Hollywood in its portrayal of poker as well. Overall, I still enjoy Solo. Pretty good. Check it out.